Okay, we saw yesterday in Mishnah, machlokus between the Chachamim and Rabbi Shimon regarding if a woman collected part of a kesuba. In other words, is it considered that you collected the whole kesuba and you lose your mizonos, or no? It's not considered as if you collected the whole kesuba, and you don't lose your mizonos. That again, we said the rule of thumb is that a woman goes ahead and she can eat from the estate, provided she doesn't collect a ksuba. Once she collects a ksuba, at that point in time, she loses her rights to go ahead and collect. So Rav Shimon said in the Mishnah, on the Mishnah in Tzadik Zayin and Beis, that even if you collect part of the ksuba, or you give away part of the ksuba as a present, or you mashkin part of the ksuba for collateral as a loan, right? You can't do two din. One, you can't sell it only in Bezdin. The rest in Bezdin, because it's even though it's you lose your right. Because usually from Mizonos, I'm just reviewing. Just from Mizonos, you could go ahead and you can go now. And okay, so that's the machlokes between the Mishnah. Now, it's master for Reb Shimon, guys. That according to Reb Shimon, that once you go ahead and spend part of it, it's like the whole thing is gone, right? The whole thing is gone. You don't say that you retain the rest of the money. It's like you lost the money, because if you view Reb Shimon as retaining, just because I spent part of it, you're retaining all of it, then you'll be able to collect your mizonos because you didn't collect your ksuba. Says the Gemara. Mastisa money. Who's the Tana of Mishnah that says that what partial payment of ksuba you lose rights from mizonos? That's Rav Shimon. The Tanya macha ksubasa mishkana ksubasa. If you sold your ksuba or you gave it as a mashkon, asa ksubasa apoitiki. If you made it the first lien that dafka you're going to collect from this property, apoitiki from the matrikin apo tehei koi. It should be from there. Le'echad ein la mizonos. La'acher to another person ein la mizonos. You don't have mizonos, you lose it. Rav Shimon Aimer, afa bishlem. So that's the whole ksuba, guys, right? And that Tanakama, that's the whole ksuba. So then you lose your mizonos. Mashma, according to the Tanakama, if you would partial payment, you would not lose your mizonos. Conversely, Rav Shimon Aimer, afa bishlem makrav le mishkan v'ksasa ela machtzisa. Even half of it, part of it, of the mizonos, you use the mizonos. Okay, so our Mishnah that was anonymous and said that you lost your right, that you can't collect them, you lose your right to mizonos, you have to sell in Bezdin. If it's mizonos out of Bezdin, it must be Rav Shimon who says that a partial payment is like a whole payment. L'meimer the Rabbi Shimon Savar, the law Amrino, we don't say mixes kesef kol kesef, meaning if I'm holding on to part of it, listen to the words. If I'm holding on to part of it, it's as if I'm holding on to all of it. Guys, if I'd be holding on to part of it, it would be considered like I'm holding on to all of it. I would not lose my ksuba because I still have my ksuba, correct? Rav Shimon seems to say losing part of it, you lost all of it. You don't, not the whole thing. The Gemara is going to make the most unbelievable sushtel that only a Gemara can make. Only a Gemara is going to see in a second. So we see the light of Shimon. You don't say mixes kesef kechol chesed as if you hold all the money. Rabbanan Sarvi, Amina mixes kesef kechol chesed. The Rabbanan who say if you pay off part of the ksuba, you still retain rights to eat your mizonos. It's because as if you have the whole ksuba, right? Even though you only have part of it, it's if you have all of it. Good. Now we're going to bring this back to Yavamis and early in the Masechta. We know a kohen gadol can only marry a basula, correct? We had a machloikis again about a boigeres, a girl who is 12 and 6 months, right? At that point in time, physically, this shinuyim changes where no longer is her basulim the quintessential basula. You know, it seems to be it weakens or it grows apart. Whatever it is, we had a machloikis, and we're going to revisit that machloikis in view of the shita of kichola kesef. It's amazing. Like only the Gemara can make this unbelievable tzushtel. So again, Rav Shimon holds that what? You don't say if I have part, I have the whole. And the Chachamim say, no, if I have part, I have the whole. If I have part of the ksuba, I have the whole ksuba. And Rav Shimon says, no, you don't. It says the Gemara, 1 second. Ha'ibcha shaminan. We hear the opposite, right? The Tanya. Who isha b'busula yikach. We said that what? A kohen gadol has to marry what? A basula. Prat libageres. This would exclude a bageres. Shekolu b'suleha. The Reb Meir, right? That's what Rabbi says. In other words, we don't say, according to Rabbi, part is like the whole. We don't say like Rabbi, part is like the whole, so therefore she's not a basula. Rabbi Lazar, Rabbi Shimon, that's what we need. Machshirim b'bogeres. They say no. They say bogeres, even if she's only partial bogeres, she's considered like a whole bogeres. I'm telling you, only the Gemara can make this parallel, guys. Listen to the parallel. Reb Shimon says the following. He says, if you have part of the money, it's like you don't have part of the money. Yet by Basulim, if you have part of the Basulim, it's like you have the whole Basulim. The Chachamim say by Ksuba, if you have part, it's like you have the whole. And yet Rabbi, who's the Shita of the Chachamim, was saying by Basulim, we say no. We say if you don't have all of it, you only have part of it, you don't have all of it. Unbelievable sushtel. Says the Gemara, no, it's not a good sushtel at all. Reb Shimon holds part of money is not like the whole money, and the Chacham part of money is like the whole money, right? And therefore, the din is asay. By here is the way you darshan the pasuk. It says v'isha bibsuleha yikach. Now, the word bisuleha is made up of two components. Bisula, right? It's made up of the word bisula, and it's made up the word bisuleha. Says the Gemara, and the base. Says the Gemara inside. Hasam over there by the Kohen Gadol, they argue in the pasuk, and it has nothing to do with Atzushtel. Reb Meir Savar Besula, if it would have said Besula, it would have been mashma afilu mitzas besulim. It would have meant that even if she's a Baigeres who has part of the besulim, you could marry. Therefore, it says Besuleha adeika kula besulim, that only a naira and not a Baigeres. Besula would mean even a partial besula. A partial besula meaning what? A Baigeres. Besuleha, no, a full-fledged besula. And then it says bibsuleha, the base in bibsuleha, bikidarka in shalai kidarka loy. Dafka a besula bikidarka, but if it's shalai bidarka, it would not be a problem. So that's the Tanakama. The Tanakama holds that a Baigeres is out, but a girl who had bia shaloi kidarka is in. She would be a basula, guys. That's the drasha. Reb Shimon, Reb Lazar, Reb Shimon Sarvi, basula shleima mashma. Basula is mashma, full-fledged basula. Basulaha afilu mitzas basulam, meaning even a bageres. Afilu mitzas basulam. If it would have said basula, I would need a full-fledged basula, a naira. It says basulaha, any basula, even a bageres, and then it says bibsuleha. Sheyu kol besula kaimin. You need all the besulim there, meaning bein bechadarka, bein shaloi kedarka, that bia shaloi kedarka would passel according to Rabbi Lazar Reb Shimon. So again, the tzushtel you wanted to make from ksuba to besula, I like to play on words. From the ksuba to besula, make the blog. The ksuba, the tzushtel to the two is not a good tzushtel whatsoever, right? One is simply how you view payment, a partial payment as a whole payment. And the other one is a drasha, how you dash in the pasuk. Continuing along. So there was this woman, the tafsa kasa de kasba b'ksubasa. She grabbed a golden kos for a ksuba. But that golden, it's silver kos, excuse me, a silver kos. She gave a silver kos for a ksuba. It does not go ahead and encompass the whole thing. So this is Reb Shimon's sheet, the guise of a partial payment. So the question now would be, would this woman be able to eat her mizonos, collect her mizonos, right? Like the Chachamim, yes, like Reb Shimon, not, right? Says the Gemara, Katavim mizonei, since she was Kataveh mizonis, and they wanted a taina, the Yisraelim wanted a taina, you collect it partially, but you're not entitled to what? Your mizonis. Also, the Rava, the Shaila came in front of Rava, Amalahuli asked me, told the Yisraelim, Zilu havale mizonos, go feed him mizonos. Why? Lest the chashlei the Reb Shimon. There's not people. The halacha. We're not chayish. We're not to consider the opinion of Shimon that a partial payment is like a full payment. Losing mizainis. The Amar lo yamina mixes kesef kol kesef. That who says we don't say mixes kesef like you're holding on to the whole kesef. Ella, we hold the opposite. We hold mixes kesef kol kesef. If you're holding on to the whole ksuba, and therefore you get your mizainis. Shalach le Rava braid the Rava of Yosef. Okay, so this woman, she wants to collect a ksuba. So we said, according to the Tanakama, and if she wasn't an arusa, according to Talmud as arusa, if Shimon is in Sua, she could sell it outside of Bezdin and collect a ksuba, right? So she wants to collect a ksuba outside of Bezdin. Does she need to swear or not? Now, what, guys? Usually, the shvua that we're going to see and we've been exposed to is the lashon of tzrarei atfasei. She's holding on to some type of packet of right that she would swear before she collects the ksuba. It would necessitate her swearing that she doesn't have some partial payment, that she's holding on to lashon tzrarei atfasei, holding on to some type of bound up packet. That's not the shvua over here, guys, because that you have to swear anyway. That you have to swear anyway. In other words, she's going ahead and selling the land. We want to make sure she didn't sell the land for more than a ksuba. So that's what she have to swear. Right, guys, you hear this? Now, you would say the following. Wouldn't you know the price of the land? She's coming and she says, here, takes a parcel of land and she sells it for a ksuba, tells the Yisayimim, you're off the hook. Says the Gemara, you have a shaila, whether she has to swear or not. What's the shvua? That she didn't get more for the land than what? Than she's entitled to. Now, if that's the case, there's a better question. Would you need hachraza? Would you need her to go ahead and call out the land? Guys, hachraza means that you want to maximize your price. So you advertise as much as possible. Stam hachraza, I think the Gemara says a shleishim yoim. In other words, the more it's out there, right? The more it's out there, the more it gets more hits, right? I guess very current, right? So the Gemara is asking, once you're going to the next level of shvua, why didn't you ask whether you need achraza or not? And then we know if you need a shvua. Because if you need achraza, you'd know what, this is the ritva, guys, you'd know what it's sold for. And therefore, it would necessitate this shvua. If you would know, guys, what it was sold for, and how would you know that? Because you need achraza, you need publicity to publicize the sale, then you'd know whether you have to swear or not, because they know how much you get. So the Gemara is going to ask, why don't you ask a better question? Says the Gemara. It says, Shalach Rabba, Brei the Rava, Rabbi Yosef. So the Gemara asks, why didn't he ask him hachraza? Why didn't he ask him if you need hachraza or not? And then you'd know if you need the shvua. Guys, that's the connection. Again, once you'd answer achraza, if you need achraza, you wouldn't need a shvua, right? If you need achraza, you wouldn't need a shvua. So, Amalei, so he told him, hachraza lakami boili. So Rabba told the Rabba told Rabbi Yosef, that's not a shayla. To me, Rabbi say, Rav Nachman, almana sama la'atzma, almana that she evaluated for herself. She's selling it for herself. She didn't do anything. We don't know the true value. She woke up thinking she's an expert, right? And she evaluated it for herself. Now, hechidami, what are you speaking about? She sold it. If there was achraza and it was a true evaluation, then why do you say she didn't do anything? Ella must be lav, the loy achriz. She didn't call out. And who did she call out for? And if it's for her own collection, it's nothing. But if she sold to another, if it's sold to another person, not to her, then what? Masha asa, then it would be good. Now, so therefore what? It must be achraza. Right. So either achriz, why not come? So it must be that what? The loy achriz. And the atzma, for her, she doesn't need it. But for somebody else, you would need it. So therefore, l'chayri avaraya, that what? That you don't need achraza. Loylam the achriz. Loylam you did call out. With the armor law, you say to her, man shamlach, who went ahead and gave you a right to do this? Look at Rashi. I'm not so sure what this means. Rashi says, mas shamlech, mimi kabalta mechirazu. You went ahead and you sold this on your own right. From who are you makabel this to get? In other words, it's one thing to sell, but to sell and evaluate the value? Me kabbalah mechirazu. Loy me bezdin. Loy me assignment. No one gave you a right to go ahead, assess it yourself and sell it yourself. Lefikach lo yotza hakarka merushus hayasimim. The karka did not go ahead and leave the rishus of the assignment. Avahecha the sham lachrina nafik mishus ayarshim. When she does evaluate for somebody else, it goes to rishus to the yarshim. Because they had rishus. So for herself, she didn't have rishus. For other people, she had rishus. Not exactly sure exactly how it works, but basically, we don't have a raya over here. So therefore, loylam the achriz with amilach mash. In other words, you never right to do it even with achraza. Ki haya du gavra the afiktu gabe kista the asme. There was this person who was entrusted with what? With kista the asme. Rashi says kista is mispoy, is lashon of fodder. And there's another girsa al moigin shekarin coral. Coral is very expensive. You're going from. The bottom line is it was an expensive object. Either it was coral or Rashi's first tried was fodder. Now this dead man, he owned 400 zuz to Yisoinim. Okay, so what happened? So there was this man, the Hugav, the Afik, the Kami Kista the Yasme, Azul Shamal and Nafshe, Barba. He was owed 400 for the Yisoinim, and he went ahead and he sold it for 400, and the Yaka and Kam B'Sheisme, and it stood up for that 600. Now he wanted the extra 200. So Asla coming to Ravami, Amalei, Man Shamlach, if told me, who told you had no right to go evaluate it in the first place? The Isha had no right to evaluate it in the first place. You had no right to evaluate it in the first place. So that Loyasov Le Klum Ken Zain, there was Achraza, but Loyasov Le Klum, because you had no right for this evaluation. And what's the bottom line? Behilchasa, Sricha Shvua, you would need a Shvua, Vein Sricha Achraza, and you do not need Achraza. So she would have to swear to the assignment if she sold the land exactly what she got for it, and you would need Achraza, which again would make sense, because if you need Achraza, then you shouldn't need a Shvua.
Is the reasoning behind it because you could do it for yourself? It looks like it's not honest.
That says there's no rishus to do it. I know it. Rashi seems to say you have no rishus to do it, but she could sell it. I'm not exactly sure. I'm not exactly sure. What? It's okay. Says the Mishnah. Almana shoyis ksubasa masayim, an almana who had a ksuba for 200. Almana had a ksuba for 200. Umachra shavamana, and she sold it for 100. So the ksuba was for 200, and she went ahead and she sold the field for 100. Excuse me. Almana shoyis ksuba masayim umachra shavamana b'masayim. She went ahead. She was a good business lady, and she sold a field that was only worth 100 for 200. In other words, she got the full value ksuba on a land that was only worth half the ksuba. So in other words, somebody made a very poor evaluation, and someone's a very astute businesswoman. Okay, converse. So here she got the full 200, even though the land was only 100. Aishava masayim b'mana, right? Or the land was worth 200, and she was a lousy business person, and she only got 100. What's the halacha? Niskablu ksubasa. So her ksub is 200. Now she got married, she was a basula. Basula is 200. We know that, right? We know that 200. By this time it's Masech, if you don't know that, it's like not knowing what Zika is in Yavamis. Okay, so you know that it's 200. She goes ahead. She takes a field. It's worth 100. She sells it for 200. She got 200. She goes, takes a field worth 200, and she sells it for 100. Good. In both cases, she collects a ksuba. In the latter case, Rashi says, what do we tell her? At pasadet. You lost it. You should have sold it for what it's worth. The Gemara is going to ask, when she upgraded from 100 to 200, why doesn't she get the extra 100? After all, you tell me you take the loss, you should get the gain also. Okay, we'll see the Gemara. So that's the first halacha of the Mishnah. 200, 100 loses, 100, 200 wins, same amount, she collects the ksuba. Ha'ksuba mana, umachra shava mana b'dinar. Her ksuba was a mana, and she sold it for, she took a piece of land that was worth a mana a dinar, b'mana, and she sold it for a mana, machra batal. So in other words, she sold a land, let's say ksuba is $100. The land was 125. She sold it for 100. She had no right to sell this land because she had $25 more that wasn't mishubah to her. This land, guys, the land was a 100 and a dinar. It was a mana and a dinar. So I'm calling a dinar 25. Good. So if a dinar is 25, and she only can collect 100, when she took a land that was worth 125, she had no right to that land because there's 25 pieces. Not shot. You take the land, different vision. It's one shtik karka. That shtik karka has no shaykhs to her. So therefore, mechra batal. It's off. Din is off. Afilu hi emeris. Even when she says, achse dina liyarshim, I'll give back the extra 25. My ksuba's 100. Let me marry how much dollars? Leave me alone already. I sold the land. I can get my money. No one's taking the loss over here. The din is mechabat. It depends. If she returns to 25, the mechas kayim. If there would be this amount of land left, the assignment container, we don't want to sell land that's right for us. In other words, if you a land at a dinar is that you're going to be left with such a small parcel of land, it's not worth anything. But the following amount of lands that we're going to give in that situation, they could say we don't want to sell it because each one is considered a sadim if the atzmai. So says Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, why? Because the dinar is not going to go ahead and affect them. They're getting their money, and they would have trouble selling a land that's worth a dinar. It's not enough of a parcel of karka. If the extra that she sold after you break it up, it has a din of a field, then they can be vatal mecha. So Shimon Gamliel is arguing the Tanakama. Like the Tanakama, every mecha is batal. Like Shimon Gamliel, it depends. If what's left over is a field with the atzmo, it's batal. If not, it's that you can return the money and the deal's on. What's the sada? Bas tisha kavim. If it's a field for planting crops that you can plant 9 kavim. Ubegina, usually vegetables, is a genus for vegetables, is bas chatzi kav. Uchedim Rebbe Kiva bas roiva, quarter of a kav. In those cases, a quarter of a kiva, half according to the Tanakama, and a field test kavim would be enough of a parcel by itself that the field that you should nullify the sale. That's what Shimon Gamliel. Next thing, Kesuvos arba mea zuz. That's a substantial amount, 400 zuz, double the normal amount. Umachru lezeh b'mana, lezeh b'mana, ula'achron yafa mana, v'dinar b'mana. Okay. And the last one, she goes ahead, and she sells part to one, part to the other, and the last one, she sells the land that is overpriced. And in other words, she's selling a land that she had no shaykhs to. Says the Gemara, achrein batel v'shal kulam machem kayim. The last one is batel because she had no shaykhs, but the previous ones are. In other words, you can partially sell a ksuba. Don't say because the last one's no good, retroactively all is no good. Only the last one. Now, Maishna Shavim Asayim B'mana, when you sold 200 for 100, the Amrila at Asad, you lost it. In other words, who the Pasal Namshe? You're a bad businesswoman. Shavim Mana B'Masayim Nami Tema Ana Avachna, and the Yisraelim still owe me 100. I was Marviach. In other words, there's 100 zuz extra that wasn't there before. That's no small chunk of change. And you tell me I collect my ksuba? I just made them an extra $100. So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabbi Ravua, Amar Beis, Kan Shana Rebbe, over here Rebbe applied the following halacha. Hakol lebal hamois. Over Rebbe, when he learned the Mishnayos, he said Hakol lebal hamois. What's the case? Rashi, guys. Top line. Everything goes to the person who owns the money. Hashaleach shluchay l'shuk l'schayra. A person sends a messenger to the street to do some business. V'lochach bezul, and he is able to buy a good deal. Who gets it? Hakol l'balamois. He's not able to say, I made the extra money. In other words, he gives him $100 to buy $100 worth of items. He's able to get $125 for the same 100. The 25 goes to the balamois. The shliach can't say, no, you're not making money on some on shliach. You didn't invest in this, guys. You didn't invest in this at all. So this is the same case over here. The woman took it. She went ahead and made some money. Rebbe learned over here. He applied that concept just like a shliach. You are a shliach for the assignment that you're getting them to pay the ksuba. In this case, what? You can't say Kidatanya. Haisifule achas yisera. Let's say in a case where what? Where he added a total one. He goes to the guy, and the guy gives him an extra. Okay, the guy gives him The guy gives him a little extra. And we're going to see this machlokes, and in the end of the machlokes, we're going to see Rabbi holds like Rabbi Yossi guys. So it gets a little involved. Let's say you go to a storekeeper for 100, and I see for achas yisera. The storekeeper gives him a little extra. I call the shliach. The extra goes to the shliach. In other words, we say the svara that the shliach's giving, the storekeeper is giving to the shliach. These are Rabbi Yehuda. These are words of Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yossi, we don't know. It's maman amut b'safik whether he's giving it to the shliach or he's giving it to the mishaleach, and therefore cholkin maman that we're in doubt. Like sumchis cholkin, you divide it. Read the Gemara, but Tanya Rabbi Yossi Omer hakol balamois, and this is what we need. So you have a stira in Rabbi Yossi. Do you divide the money that we're in doubt, or does it all go to the mishaleach, the one who sent him? Right? Amaroni barchama like kasha. Kan b'davar sheish lo kitzva. When do you divide it? When it has a set amount. Kan b'davar shein lo kitzva. When does it go to the mishaleach? When something that doesn't have a set amount. Now, karka fellas does not have a set amount. Since karka does not have a set amount, right? This is where Rebbe, a paskin like Rabbi Yossi, b'davar shein lo kitzva, something doesn't have a set amount. Hakol lebal hamois. Everything goes to the bal hamois. Again, we want to know the question. She did a good deal. She went ahead. If she did a bad deal, she takes the loss. Why, when she makes a good deal, selling a parcel of land of 100 for 200, why doesn't she marviach? Kan shana Rebbe that the balamois gets everything. Who's the balamois in this case, guys? The Yisaimim. The Yisaimim are the balamois, right? They're the balamois. Where do you see such a din? Because we're saying by davashein la kitzva, Rebbe, by a davashe kitzva says Rabbi Yossi cholkin, you divide it between the mishaleach and the shliach. By davashe ein la kitzva, something that's not a set amount, karka is not a set amount because it goes for whatever it goes for. Then the halacha is hakol lebalamois, and in this case the yason is the balamois, and therefore even though she made more money for them, everything goes back to them. That's what Rebbe applied to them. Amra Papa. Hilchas halacha is davashe la kitzva cholkin, like in others like Yossi, davashe la kitzva kol lebalamois. My kamash malom. That's the chiddush. This is what Rabbi Yossi said. And the Gemara shinui the shanin shinuyahu. In other words, I always tell this to Mendy the Kohen, should be living well. When the Gemara gives an answer, it's in the quest for truth. Does it answer the question? We have a stira in Rabbi Yossi, right? We have a stira in Rabbi Yossi. He says one place cholkin, in one place what? In one place akol balamois. The Gemara offers an answer that apparently would explain the difference. Now the Gemara is saying, not only did you answer the contradiction, but in fact, we're taking that and applying it lahalacha. Shinui, the shanina, the teretz we gave is an emistik teretz, and we're applying it lahalacha, and therefore, if it's a davar sheish la kitzva, then cholkin, davar she'ein la kitzva, that right then, hakol balamois. Iboilahu. Amalei, he says the following, Zamili lischa, go ahead, and let's sell or buy. What is it? Sell for me what a lischa. Sell a lesach is a half a core. So he says, sell for me a half a core. And when he sold the core, in other words, he sold more than he was supposed to. He was only supposed to sell a half, and he sold more. My moisav al devar of who is he considered adding on to the words of the mishaleach, and therefore the deal is a good deal. The lischa miyakana. And at least the deal for the lesech is still in vogue. In other words, the following. You send a shliach to do something, sell X amount. He sells double. Clearly, the latter part that he sold, he wasn't a shliach to sell. Lesech is a half a core. So you have two core, one less. He was supposed one, he sold two, which equals a core. This second one clearly is off. Question is, this one's still in. Do we say that he's Moisav al Devarov and we just get rid of that, but he's still a shliach for the first lesach? Or do we say, no, he's Mavatal the shlichus completely and he's out? Now, very, very, you say this to a question. Maybe he's out completely. In other words, that's it. That's the Gemara Shaila. Okay. Okay, there's a halacha of Be'ila. We've discussed this on a few occasions. When you have Hegdish, if you take something out of Rishus of Hegdish, there can be two ways. You can be Nana from Hegdish, or just even taking out of Rishus of Hegdish. In that case, you're Moil, and in most cases, you're going to bring a Karen, have to pay for the principal, a chaimesh, a fifth, and Eadwad, a carbon asham ilis. The very unique din about Me'ila, it's one of the few places we say, Yesh shliach ledavar aveira. In other words, if you tell a person to do an aveira, right? Tell a person to do aveira, we have the concept of divrei Rav, divrei Talmud, divrei Mishomim. The words of the Rav HaKadosh Baruch Hu that don't do something. The words of the Talmud do something. You don't listen to the Talmud, you listen to Hashem, and we say that person's chayiv. By Mila is usually is b'mezit, is b'shogeg. It's usually b'shogeg, and we say yesh shlich levar aveira. So with that in mind, let's see a shlichus over here. We're going to have 3 people moil. Says the Gemara. Again, what's a shaila? A shaila is if a person does more than he's supposed to in shlichus, is the shlichus is intact, and the first part that he was supposed to do is in fact done, or no? Do we say no that the whole shlichus is batal? So Amar Rav Yaakov in our pocket, we just had him recently. Mishmei de Ravina Tashma, right? In our pocket, he was the one who gave the teretz, that hard teretz of the Gemara. How to explain 100, 50, 100, 150? He says speaking 2 tefisas, right? 75 and 225. Okay. Mishmei de Ravina Tashma. Amar Balabayis l'shluchai. The Balabayis says to a shliach, and he's unaware that the object he's about to tell him to use is hegdish. Tein lahem chatichas la'archen. Give a piece to the archim. Now this is all kachim, so he says to give 1. Who oimer tlu shtayim? The shliach says take 2. Now this is our case, guys, right? This is our case. He told him take 1. They said take 2. The hein not lushalish, and they took 3. We need the first 2 parts, not the okay. Kulan malu, they're all mile. They're all chayiv. Now amit b'shleima moisav al devarev have. If you're going to tell me that they're aired onto the words of the Mishaleach and the Shlichus is intact, Mishum Hachi Balabayis Moil, that would explain why the Balabas is Moil. Because afterwards they did their Shlichus. And they did their Shlichus plus. So the plus is Mechayiv them. But the fact that the Balabas is Chayiv, it must be the Shlichus. So who are them by the Lesech? You be kind of the Lesech. The person, the sale will be done. El Amid Mavra al Devarav Have. Right? If you're going to tell me that they're going and circumventing and overriding the balabas, that means they mavatal the shlichus, then balabayis am I moil. Then why is the balabayis moil? Again, the class. This is the shliach levar aveira. But tanan hashliach she'asa shlichusai, when the shliach does the shlichus, balabayis moil. That's yesh shliach levar aveira. So over here, but this ain't shliach. If you're telling me by adding on, they didn't do the ratzah of the balabas. And it's not Meisav al Devarav, but it's what? It's Mavral al Devarav, then the Balabaya should be Moil. Ella, when you see his Moil, it must be his Meisav al Devarav. So by Shaila, in the case where he was told to sell a Lesech, and he sold a core, the latter Lesech, to fulfill the core would be out, but the first Lesech, the deal would be a deal. That's it. And for the Gemara, you have no Raya. The Amalahu, he told him the following: Klu echan mi dai taisha balabayas. I did my shlichus. Take 1 on the balabas. The achas mi dai you take 1 on me. So in other words, they did their shlichus. They weren't meisav at all, guys. They weren't meisav. The balabas told them to take 1. They said take 1 on the balabas. That's exactly. So they fulfilled the shlichus. There wasn't a safa. The second part they did had nothing to do with the balabas, with the shaleach. That was on us. The shakel, and they took it, inu, and by the shakel inu class, and they took 3. So therefore, guys, what? The first one, the balabas is moil because they did a shlichus. Yesh shliach levar aveira. The second one is moil because they told them go ahead and take it, and the third one they're moil because they took more than they were supposed to. But we weren't placed the shaila that we have to wait for tomorrow.